Hey, this is Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS here with another Random Thoughts podcast. Finally getting back to this. I'm going to do my Red 5 recap, just thoughts that I had while listening to Red5Network podcast in the month of November. Right there, the first week of December, I lost my voice. I got so sick. Even the next week when I would try to record, I would get like 5-10 minutes in and then just start coughing. Because my throat was still so sore, even though I was physically over being sick. So with that, probably going to break this into two, because we had the Parsec Awards last month, and that kind of deserves its own. Then we had the Game Awards with all the Sonic news. I'm definitely going to have a video on that, because I have thoughts, lots of thoughts. And then I've already got a big list for reviewing Red5Network for December. So let's get into it while I still have a little bit of time here to get some of this recorded. We're going to start right off the bat with a Certain Point of View podcast. Josh, you talked about Pixar's Pink trailer, and I have to say that I 100% agree. I was shocked by how they handled it, and it's not that I have a problem with the messaging. I do think that the messaging of both that women should be better accepted in the workplace, and that as a woman in the workplace you shouldn't feel the need to lose yourself or try to adapt to act like men. Like, it's not bad messaging. However, art style wise, you go through this thing where you have cartoons that are made for kids, and then there's kind of like this generation gap, and then there's adults who have kids, and teenagers, which is more where I would say this message kind of would hit. They're not going to be as into this stuff. Of course, I'm speaking from a male perspective. Maybe girls would be, but when you think like these Pixar shorts and what they typically are, they're funny, they're goofy, they're little nonsensical things. You feel pretty safe as a parent just going, hit play all, let's go through these. And I never would have thought that I needed to pre-check them before showing them to my daughter. There's certainly, like, there's certain aspects or things that maybe by the cover I could say, well, I don't really want to expose my daughter to that. But you look at it, there's nothing about this that would tell me that. And basically the idea of, they show this little pink ball come into the male workplace and, getting treated pretty rotten. But the solution that it comes up with is to become like one of the guys and tell dirty jokes. I mean, that was the thing, is like they started telling innuendos and dirty jokes, and it was just wrong. It was so mixed signals, because it's I feel like there's a way to add that subcontext, that message, without doing that. And it's something that I'm sure, like, for adults, like, it's really, but it's not. I don't really think with Pixar that that's your primary audience. It was just odd, because I feel like probably the late teens, which is the era when people are, like, yeah, cartoons, and they're kind of, they everyone goes through that period where they kind of, I'm, too cool for that, is probably the period when this would be the most impactful. But yeah, is what it is. But I felt really weird by it, and it's kind of weird, because they've made a big point of making Disney Plus family friendly, and I mean, it's PG-13, but it was very odd. Then going on next, the Escape Pod. I loved how when you were talking about your review of Eternals and how your recommendation went. Everybody should go see this, unless you're Backyard TARDIS. I love that. I'm really glad you guys like the movie. I am one of those ones where there's certain things in comics that if I spend my money on it, I feel cheated. Like it's soap opera. It's to me it's corny. It's not cool. And as much as I like Marvel, I love reading me some Iron Man, some Spider-Man, some Fantastic Four and stuff. Stuff with the Eternals, it's just not my cup of bag. Same with Guardians of the Galaxy. And so I just, when it's adapted to the big screen, I don't care. I don't care. And, the best thing that came out of the Eternals was Thanos, and we've already done Thanos. So it's like we've already got the best part. We don't actually need the Eternals. But that's just my opinion. I know it's different than a lot of people's, but I am glad that you enjoyed it. Okay, next up, converSWations. You had the Attack of the Star Wives, the Star Wives Attack of the Idiots, I should say. A great episode. I really liked their take on episode 2. Certainly, I am made no secret that I am not a fan of episode 2. So I liked hearing Bernadette and Kelly's take on that. And I'll probably clip this out as a separate video for them, just so they don't have to go through all this other nerd stuff to get to it. But I wanted to take the answer to their question seriously. And I wanted to let them know, I'm sorry, I was under the weather. I hadn't been able to record a video. I didn't have a voice for a while there. But I have been giving lots of thoughts to their question of, on the light side, who is the best fighter? Because, we don't... Yoda failed. So who is the best fighter for Palpatine? And, if you were to ask nerds like your husbands, they would probably tell you something like Anakin. He's the chosen one. But, well, is he the light side? Or is he, because, people would go, oh, Obi-Wan. Or there's all these different ones. And then, of course... all these different ones, but I thought, how would Bernadette and Kelly view it? That was my thought. I was like, how can I rationalize it with their thing? And so why do they look at Yoda as such a failure? Well, he didn't recognize the threat of the Palpatine. He didn't realize what was going on with Anakin. However, there is another Jedi Master who your husbands don't like. Well, I shouldn't say that. But they would like to point out that he was not a very good Jedi, that he was kind of a jerk. And that would be Mace Windu. And so I think from your perspective, Mace Windu, Samuel L. Jackson, he pointed out right from the get-go that it was a bad idea to train Anakin. He also didn't think he thought that Palpatine was up to stuff. And he wanted to motivate him to be spied on by Anakin. He realized that something was going on there, that he wasn't... some of his moves were questionable. And when they go to confront Palpatine, you see the other Jedi there, they're almost like they're not there. Like, they just get cut down and thrown out like they're nothing. Mace Windu, however, he's getting the upper hand. Now, there is some debate about whether or not Palpatine was playing with him to try to turn Anakin. But needless to say, he didn't go down in seconds like the other Jedi. He held his own. And at that point, out of all the Jedi, he's the one that actually had some common sense. It's like, hey, this stuff doesn't smell right. This is not going down right. And he's also considered... under Yoda, the best fighter of the bunch. So, by kind of like canon. So, from that point of view, I really think that, the equal or opponent on the good side is Mace Windu. So I hope that answers your question. And I think you'll see as you get into Revenge of the Sith, you'll see that. You'll see that he takes the action against Palpatine. And it really shows that, like, from the beginning, he's had a very different take than the rest of the group there. And if everyone had listened to him, well, yes, everyone says, well, he's the jerk. He's the one that didn't, but he was also right. So if everybody listened to him, if they didn't train Anakin, if they started suspecting Palpatine sooner, some of this could have been avoided. So I think for the Star Wives, they're gonna appreciate that he's a misunderstood character. Anyways, hope that answers your question. And if you have any other questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. Once again, appreciate you. I always get excited, especially you recently had a podcast that you did with Ro, and that was a true joy. So, talking about some Star Trek. And so it was really cool to find out that you're big Star Trek. And I think they kind of oversold those beds, those medical beds that we have nowadays. They may give readouts, but they're not magical like the ones in Star Trek. But right there, McCoy, he all he had to do was wave a salt shaker over people. That's what he was doing. He was waving a salt shaker. So, I'm looking forward to that technology when our common salt shakers can start being medical devices. So, all right, I will catch you in the next time you're on the podcast. Looking forward to it. All right, next one, we're going to look at Rouge One Radio. We've got, I wanted to welcome Nicole, Peace Love Star Wars on Twitter, she's known, to Rouge One Radio, part of the Red5Network family. So really glad to have you on board. Just wanted to take a moment to say that. So I got a lot of these quick fire ones. Next, the Science Fictionary talked about their MCU rankings. And you talked about your top 5 and your bottom 5. And I know my controversial one is that the Guardians of the Galaxy movies might actually make it into my bottom 5. It's been a while since I've looked at my list. I definitely put Iron Man 3 in my bottom 5, which was one of yours in the top 5. But for me, the Mandarin, what they did with that character, really always irked me with the Iron Man movies. Also, him blowing up all the suits at the end bugged me. And the other thing that bugged me is they took this random villain who just seemed like an everyday villain. And Iron Man fights like end of the world type villains, and he's just wrecking Iron Man suits, like just tearing through them like they're nothing. And it really, to me, depowered Iron Man. And seeing that where they go next in the movies, where he fights Ultron, and then we see him fighting Thanos, it was really weird to have this movie right before, like, ramped up and Iron Man started getting OP. He went from just kind of like the mediocre mid-tier, he's not Hawkeye and Black Widow, but he's not Thor and Hulk. He was kind of in the middle. And then, by the end of Infinity War, like, he's right up there throwing punches at the level of them with his nano suit that's like reforming, and he's going toe to toe with Thanos, who beat up the Hulk. So it just felt weird because here you just have like this kind of like villain of the week, and he's just tearing through, melting Iron Man suits left and right, and it just really bugged me. So to me, that's my lowest. And then Thor 2 is also in my lowest. I just like that movie. But the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, I've just never been a fan. You all kind of talked about Black Panther. Black Panther for me is kind of in the middle. Black Panther is one of those movies that I absolutely loved to watch it. I thought it was a really great movie. But it was more like a drama movie to me than like an action superhero movie. So it doesn't have a lot of rewatchability. I don't go back and rewatch a Hallmark movie after I've seen it. There's just certain, if I see a really drawn out drama show, is usually it's not something I'd go back and rewatch. Action, sci-fi stuff, I'll go rewatch, but some of the stuff that I think is some of really compelling TV that's drama, once I've seen it, I just can't go back and watch it. And Black Panther, in a lot of ways, although it had action, it had a lot of that spectacle, because it was so intriguing, it's just a movie that I really liked that I don't really go back and watch again. Unless I'm specifically doing like an all MCU movies from beginning to end, I don't watch it. But I can, any point, put Iron Man or Infinity War or Thor Ragnarok. Those are movies that I can just put on and enjoy. But Black Panther would not be one of those. I either need to be really in the mood or be specifically trying to go through the MCU. And then there was one, though, that Marissa put Age of Ultron in her bottom 5. And I was just shocked. First of all, for me, that's not even the lowest of the Avenger movies. For me, the lowest of the Avenger movie is Endgame. I liked Age of Ultron better than Endgame. And this is one when you talked about the iconic fight scene. Like, to me, that one is full of iconic fight scenes. And I really like just the whole battle that they're going through. And like the lines that Cap have, if you die, walk it off. That whole movie to me, from beginning to end, is enjoyable. Now, Avenger movies are kind of on a high. Like, I don't quite like it better than the original. The original just is so special to me. And I know retroactively, a lot of people don't like the original as much. I absolutely love the original. And Infinity War is the only movie that's come close to dethroning the original. Infinity War is absolutely amazing. But Endgame has amazing moments, but it really kind of drags out for me, especially when you watch it as a full movie. Infinity War and Endgame, it's like Infinity War is already long, but it doesn't feel long. Endgame feels long. They're both long movies, but Endgame feels long. Infinity War doesn't. Infinity War has you on the edge of your seat beginning to end. Endgame feels like they put all the exposition somehow in the second movie. With that said, Civil War, Captain America Civil War, I pretty much call that an Avengers movie. And I think that and Age of Ultron are kind of, I flip-flop on which one I like better depending on the day. But yeah, so those are kind of my big differences. And I think Shang-Chi has, it's hard. I think he's popped into my top 5. If not, definitely my top 10. It's really hard because I look at it and I go, pretty much the Avenger movies are my top 5. And then I go after that and I go, okay, well, I've got Iron Man, and I've got Captain America the First Avenger, and I got Thor Ragnarok. I really like those movies, and Shang-Chi has just kind of put itself on that level, equal with those. And so it's kind of like, okay, the Avenger movies and that. The other one that everybody loves is Winter Soldier. And personally, I can't, everything about Winter Soldier is something that I should like. It's got retro time spy stuff, which I'm really into. However, the shaky cam stuff gives me motion sickness. I cannot fully enjoy that movie. And so I spend most of that movie, like, I watch it, but constantly like look away and like play on my phone or something, because otherwise I can't. So I've never ranked that movie high, but I know a lot of people, it's their favorite. So all right, another one from the Science Fictionary, we had Bring Back the Gate. I got to go on with Dreaming Tabitha and A Mandalorian. were other guests there with me. We had a fun time talking about Stargate. I really appreciate that you guys did this. Sorry that my internet thing, and I ended up doing the whole thing like this. You know, when I was, I'm animated, especially when I get talking about Stargate. I really love Stargate, and so with that, I've started my own series talking about each of the seasons of Stargate, listing out my top 10 episodes. But I really liked with the guests. I think when we started speculating about what they could do next, what could be the big bad, and I can't remember if it was Mandalorian or Dreaming Tabitha that brought out the one of them talked about alternate Earths, and I really liked that idea because that they can play around with that. Because when you think alternate Earths, they get to bring back maybe characters who have been killed off, and maybe do something fun with them. That could be cool. I've always liked when they did that. The other thing that I will say is, it got me thinking really hard about this, and I'm going to go back to the Furlings. I look at the idea of like the human race. If you were to contact us at different points in time in history, we're very different. And admittedly, like had Nazi Germany won World War II, like we'd be a very different place right now. So what if the Furlings, because we looked at these 5 great races as being very benevolent, and we see the Nox, they've gone completely pacifist. The Asgard are scientifically advanced, but they've really kind of taken upon themselves to try to help defend the rights of people throughout, against the Goa'uld. And we saw the ancients, they kind of pieced out and ascended to a higher plane of existence, and now they morally find it wrong to interfere with us. So what are the Furlings doing? Well, what if the Furlings, culture changed? Maybe something really bad happened to them, and they also got no help from the ancients, and they were kind of bitter about it. What if they're not good guys anymore? Wouldn't it be cool to have us seeking out the Furlings? Oh yeah, we're the 5th race. We need to find the other 4th race. Boom, we find them, and maybe some really bad stuff has happened to them, and they blame the ancients for it. And now, instead of finding a new ally, a new source of technology, we've awakened one of the 4 great races against us. And if such an attitude, here's once again how you could bring the Nox back in it. Because something that I really wanted to see out of the Ori arc is I wanted to see the Ori attack the Nox. I wanted to see what the Nox would do at that point, and I would imagine the Nox as a majority would continue their pacifist way. They would run or flee or something. But what if one of the younger Nox decided to join the SGC? Could you imagine having an SGC team with a Nox on it? The powerhouse that would be. But you'd have to have a bad guy that would justify that. And just kind of the concept, and I know with the RPG game you can do that, and when they were making the RPG game, or the sorry, lack of sleep, when they were making the game before that got canceled, that Nox was going to be a playable race. So I think this is an idea that Brad and the team behind Stargate have wanted to do before, but they never got to. And I really would like to see it happen. Is let's get the Nox on the team, kind of to the level that we had like the Asgard. Let's have them start upgrading our guys. Okay, next one. Kind of going through these real quick. WSTR did an Imperial inspection on Luke Skywalker. And I have to say, you guys pulled this off amazingly. Absolutely amazingly. It just really is one of those things where I look at it and I go, I don't know how somebody does that and does it in a way that covers all the movies, including The Last Jedi. And yet, I think anybody, whether you hated The Last Jedi, loved The Last Jedi, you could listen to Your Imperial Inspection and enjoy it. So I got to tip my hat off to you, because you guys know how to break this stuff down perfectly. Really well done. And then you did Finn, and I agree with you. Finn is a character that had so much potential, and it was wasted. And I really think a lot of that, I know many of you at WSTR enjoy The Last Jedi. I did not. However, I didn't like it for a number of different reasons than most people who don't like The Last Jedi. And one of them is really Finn's storyline. I really feel like all the main characters, Finn, Rey, and Poe, were done really poorly in Episode 9. Rey probably the best, but having her have all the attitude with Luke did not do her character any favors. But with Finn, he wakes up. He kind of made all this progression by the end of Force Awakens, and they kind of reset him. And then he's trying, the whole Canto Bite thing was pointless. So when that movie ends, Finn did nothing. Every time Finn was about to do something, they either said it didn't matter or they voided it out. And so his character never progressed. And that was disappointing. The same with Poe, him mutinying. It really, it didn't progress him as a character, in my opinion. It didn't do him any favors. Whereas, as much as The Force Awakens, to me, kind of felt like a generic rehash of A New Hope, and I was like, okay, well, we had that to get all the Star Wars fans, but now we're going to get... I was really hopeful for Rey, Finn, and Poe, and that was like the biggest thing for me with The Last Jedi, was the fact that when the end of it happened, I was less into Rey, Finn, and Poe than I was at the end of Force Awakens. And so, but I do like your thing is, I think Finn had a lot of potential to go into him becoming a Jedi, and I do hope that they explore that at some point. All right, now, Sidebar Cantina. You guys talked about 80s gadgets, and I wanted to take a moment to talk about the ultimate 80s gadget for nerds, and that was Rob for the NES. This was at a point in time when we had the crash of the gaming market, and they couldn't get department stores to stock an NES. So what did? They made this robot toy that puts the cartridges into the console and sold it as a robot toy to get people to buy their video game system, and to get places like Macy's and JCPenney's and Sears to put it in their catalog. That's so creative, and Nintendo has a thing. It was a trading card and toy company, and how that came in. So, like, Rob is like the ultimate 80s nostalgia thing. You also had your one on the OG Xbox. And it's kind of funny, you were talking about the internet and online gaming. And, it's kind of funny, the Dreamcast was a pioneer of that, but they had online gaming on the Sega Genesis. And so, but that actually went through your cable box instead of through the phone cable. So it went through... your cable. There was online gaming on the Sega Genesis, and digital downloadable games too on the Sega Genesis. So that was kind of interesting that Sega was always one of those. And recently, another podcast I listened to, which is the Sega Bits Sega Talk podcast, they actually did one about the transcripts from a meeting between Sega and Microsoft that there was a period of time when Microsoft was kind of courting Sega to go in partners on the Xbox to maybe make it backwards compatible with the Dreamcast. Those ended up falling through, but what was interesting is that they had a meeting with the staff at Sega talking about how to set up a successful online platform. And so Sega basically went through the do's and don'ts of what they had. And one of the things that they told them is you need to have some online sports games, because that is going to immediately bring there without that. And then you only need one or two main hit titles to sell the service, but they need to be really good. They need to be people drawers into it. And so, Sega had Phantasy Star Online. Microsoft had Halo. And so it kind of goes to show that they really kind of learned and worked with Sega to help them to develop that. And I think that is one of the reasons why Xbox was able to come out the door. They got to look at what worked and didn't work with the Sega Dreamcast. They had the money and the legs to produce an unsuccessful system, whereas Sega was coming off of a series of bad decisions that doomed the Dreamcast before it even launched. When it launched, it was the fastest selling system in history, out making the money of the episode 1 in its first 48 hours. So it was kind of one of those things that was a big deal at the time. However, it was ahead of its time. And in a lot of ways, Microsoft has picked up the torch of the Dreamcast and ran with it. And I really appreciate that. I've never been a Microsoft person as far as like having Xboxes and stuff, but always appreciated that. And I know a lot of Sega fans really like Microsoft. And then lastly, you talked about Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Man, what a great movie. What a great movie. Love this movie. I legit, this is just a fun, put on in the background, enjoy movie. And it definitely, I think, hit me at that right point in life. And I think that's what it is, of, trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life. And just kind of, Ferris Bueller became like the epitome of what is cool. Much kind of the same way of like Marty McFly. He was very much like a Marty McFly character for me. Like, I looked at them and I'm like, that's what cool is. And to me, I realized cool is confidence. That was the big thing that I took away from that, is that you kind of go through life with confidence. If you're not presenting yourself with confidence, then you're not cool. But if you have the confidence there, then ultimately, you're cool. Okay, next one, Salty Nerd Podcast. You did your retro rewatch. First of all, I don't know if I would have caved to Kadish on that. For me personally, these were rewatches. Love these movies. I've already purchased the merch that you've done in this podcast. But you did the Robinson Crusoe on Mars. And it's funny because Gene Roddenberry said that this was one of his key inspirations for Star Trek. So get that. He loved the care to detail on doing their best to be scientifically accurate. Gene Roddenberry. But what I find funny is that this movie is complete plagiarizing, not of the book of its namesake, but of The First Men on the Moon by H.G. Wells. In that one, they find like these leeks that they start eating, and it makes them high, and then they had been hiding from the alien, like bug people, the Moonies, and instead of hiding anymore, now they started like shouting insults on them because they were high, and they get captured. So when you started talking about like the food and so much of like just how they expect that to work, that's how H.G. Wells did. And so when you think about these things, this is before people went to the moon. And it's funny what the scientific community, because H.G. Wells, his books like really lay out scientific thought. And so it's really funny just how much they could consider that scientifically accurate, but just how wrong they are. And it makes me think about stuff like, in another 100 years or so, if we have replicators and holodecks and stuff like that, like how much are we going to look at Star Trek and like, that's not how that stuff works. Oh, that's so stupid. Like they thought that's how that works. That's not how that works. When we actually accomplish some of these technologies or prove that some of them are impossible, it's just funny to think about how that one works. The Day the Earth Stood Still. This for me is a 5 out of 5 movie. This is no joke, in my opinion. I'm going to get very controversial here. This is like on par with the Indiana Jones franchise. Maybe, I don't want to say it's better, it's different, but this is like, to me, this is true cinema. This is such a well put movie from so long ago that still holds up till today, and it should not have been rebooted. This is like Wizard of Oz. This is just a movie that was done perfectly then, and it shouldn't be redone. Just like Star Wars and different things. Like, you don't need to remake this movie. This movie is good as it is, and really, when I think of retro, like this is the number one. This is like retro sci-fi at its peak. You got to have your interview with the C showrunner, and I really liked what they talked about, how Apple and Prime versus stuff like Netflix and Hulu, and just the difference in how they spend money and how they produce, and to some extent, I think Disney and HBO can kind of play in that, like, because Disney and HBO, like, they got money to burn. Netflix needs to be on budget. Like, they need to do that. Like, I definitely think that, like, that was kind of like HBO Max's, or HBO. Max is kind of a different thing, but like their idea of making, putting more money into something, get something better, and be more about just kind of dominating that space. But it definitely seems like Amazon Prime and Apple take a very different look at things and content, which is really gets me excited about Stargate being on Amazon. Although I will say, I would much rather have the people Stargate get an Orville budget and be on Hulu Netflix than to get say a Game of Thrones budget be on Amazon Prime and we only get 8 episodes a year, and it be all one solid story plotline for those 8 episodes, and every season is one little arc. To me, Stargate is the mission of the week, and I don't think I'd like it if they changed it like that. So that's the only thing that has me concerned about that, is because sometimes when you have more money, it doesn't necessarily make something better. Case in point, Foundation, man. Your reviews of Foundation have been really good. I'm right there with you, Jude. There's a part of me that's a sci-fi fan that looks at Foundation and go, man, this is a good sci-fi show. There's a lot to love about this show. It looks beautiful. But there's another part of me that goes, how can you screw up from the book so bad? Especially with Harding. Harding is my biggest complaint about that, because it completely butchers the character from what the character was in the books. I don't care about the gender swap. And all those complaining that it was a race swap, the race isn't even described. But Harding specifically had the line that anybody who had to would only resort to violence if they weren't smart. So it was just an absence of smart. But here we have a character that is like, we needed guns. I told you we needed guns. Like, it was constant. Like, we need to blow stuff up. It's not that character. It's not that character. And very frustrating for me. I feel with June. After doing the prequel book, I think that would have made for a better show for them to do. Definitely with all the Klingon stuff going on, I think it would have tied in well to that. Now, with Invasion, your guys' reviews of Invasion have been just on par, and it is funny hearing, when you hear the directors of this talking about what makes the show great, you hear them just like, what's really great about this show is that we decided to do this and this and this, and the whole time you're listening, you're going, that doesn't sound like a good idea. That sounds like very bad decisions. And listening to your guys' review, like, I just skipped on this. Like, if it was heartwarming people, and I don't care that we didn't get to see the aliens really, but it's one of those two things. Either it needed to be like Jurassic Park, where you have a bunch of jerks, but then you get to see them get eaten by the dinosaurs. Like, well, okay, let's see just aliens take these people out. Or you need to have like some shining people, and you kind of liken this to Lost. And I'm gonna say, hold your horses there. Lost had there were a lot of complicated people, but it made a point of making you like those people. You became emotionally attached to those people. That was not true in Invasion. Also, while Lost did constantly add more mystery boxes, they did explain a lot of them. You know, the polar bears and the cages and the different things like that, all in later seasons got explained during the writer's strike, no less. But the smoke monster got explained at the end. Now, people didn't like the explanation of that, but it did get explained. There wasn't really, by the end of Lost, there was no plot thread, no mystery box that actually didn't get tied up. People didn't like how it got tied up, but at least it got tied up. Invasion seems like it hasn't done that. Of course, it's only one season long, but this just seems like such a bad show. Okay, last one here to close out. Christian Fandom Geek. First of all, the Lord be with you podcast. If you've been listening to this, thank you. I've just been rambling on about a bunch of podcasts, and I know you're over on the other side of the pond, and being big in the Sega fandom, which is huge over there. I got a lot of friends that are over there. I know that time zones are wonky, and we need to get more Red5Network people over there, so you have people to collaborate with more and work out that. And Ro has a hard enough time working out East Coast to West Coast. But with that, I wanted to say, keep at it. I really appreciate your videos. I really like how you examine things through the morals of it. And, talking about the integrity of characters like Superman and different things. I really appreciate that. I have seen some other individuals kind of take the approach that you have, but it not hit, that it then almost detract from the message. But the way you do it is really good, and so I want to say keep at it. I know right now you're not getting a lot of traction yet, but you just joined the Red5 Network, and you're going to find that the more you interact with the Red 5 Network, the more and more of these our Red 5 peeps are gonna find your podcast. The problem is we have over 30 podcasts right now, and so for some of us, like it's taken, like I didn't immediately check out the Laura Be With You podcast, but I have now, and I really enjoy it. So I just want to say there's more of me out there that are gonna find your channel and love it. If you enjoy doing it, keep doing it. Don't focus on the numbers. Just keep doing it. And that is how you build the fan base and interact with the fans. That's the other thing is, one of the things, I listen to over 50 different podcasts. And actually, I think it's up to 60 now. I've added, I was at like 53, 54, and I added like another 5 over the last month. Picked up a bunch of new Stargate ones. But definitely, it's one of those things where I think if you interact with the fans, they'll talk about you more online. Whether they're on Facebook or Twitter or wherever it is, they're going to talk about you because they get that interaction. I found that's really how I grew close to a lot of the Red 5 Network podcasts, is because of how much they interact with us. And a lot of other podcasts, maybe because they're so big, or whatever, like I don't get a lot of responses when I at them online or something, and so then I just kind of stop talking about them, because it's like, what's the point if they don't respond? I still listen to their podcast, still enjoy their podcast, but when I have that interaction, then I'm like constantly tweeting about them, making posts about them. So keep it up. You make great content. With that, my next one, we'll be talking about the Parsec Awards, but we are going to split that out because I've already gone on for 45 minutes plus here. Really enjoying the Red 5 Network. You guys are putting out content. There are tons of other podcasts that I've listened to this month, even in the Red 5 Network, that I didn't get a chance to mention to, but these were just some of the many thoughts on your wonderful podcast that I had. I hope everyone is having a good day and a good month, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.